gorgeous people. Happy
People.
Halloween, everyone. It's so nice to see all these lovely. Gosh, Emily, you are popular. Okay, you guys. Do you prefer Emily Pike Stewart or Emily Stewart or
Emily Pike Stewart is great. That's my full name and I love it. It's my like professional name because when I joined Actors Equity, they made you like pick a name that no one else had. And there was already an Emily Pike and already an Emily Stewart, but there's no other Emily Pike Stewart.
it sounds like famous. Sounds like a famous actress name. I quite like it. Okay. So I have Emily Pike Stewart here tonight, you guys. Emily, there's nothing about this business that she doesn't know, hasn't been around, and doesn't have a wise take on it. I'm going to do a quick intro of, you guys all know I do my own little indulge me, why I thought, oh my God, I want Emily on the show. And then I'm going to jump into some interesting questions and we're going to celebrate Halloween together. And then we're going to find out all about Nomad Narrator. And I also want to, very, very importantly, let you know that you are happy to interject your questions, but you do know the golden rule, guys. What is it? Nothing we can find on Google. Don't bore me. It's got to be quirky. It's got to be funny. The more out there, the better. So come up with some, throw them at me, and towards the end of the call, we will see what we've got for Emily. So Emily is one of those names that you always hear, in the community, you're a respected narrator, everyone knows who you are. But I had been on one of the groups and I'd posted something. And I'm one of those people that will like, I'll have a moment of wanting to engage and I'll post something controversial on a massive group. And then 3 comments in, I'll start panicking and thinking, what have I done? But Emily's comments they were wise. They were kind. They were balanced. They were fun. And I thought, this is a girl you want to know. This is, she's smart. She's not, there's a British expression. I don't know if the Americans know it. She's not a twat. She thinks carefully when she says things and
I'm gonna
she's
put that in my reviews and think, not a twat.
not a
That's
twat. It's a good tagline, isn't it? And also, I'm sorry, the girl has a mean sense of style and fashion. She's got some serious taste. So, 10-year-old Emily, introduce me to her. What were
oh
you
my
like when
goodness.
you were 10? Did you have dreams and goals and ambitions, or were you just a little girl playing with Barbie dolls? Tell me about 10-year-old Emily.
I never did the Barbie doll thing. I had Barbies, but I never really played with them. Like make believe. Let me think about 10-year-old Emily was a big nerd, which I say that in a very loving way. She was very interested in reading, which that worked out well, didn't it?
Yeah, all the best people were nerds when they were young.
um she was interested in um gosh, it's really funny. I have sort of like I've always felt like from age 11 onward, I've had like the same sort of like psyche. Like, I've grown and become an adult and had stuff in life happen and all of that. But like when I think back all the way through childhood, it's like I feel like around 11 is where I really sort of felt like I sort of came into the same consciousness that I have now throughout the
Good.
rest of my life. So 10 is like right before that. And so it's a little interesting to kind of try to think of like, oh, who was I right before that as like a little one?
It would be
Um,
interesting, like what the difference is between the 10-year-old and the 11-year-old. Like, what do you think changed? Like personality wise, feeling wise, and
uh, if I had to make a guess, it would be that, okay, so I went to the same grade school from kindergarten through 8th grade, and it divided in 4th and 5th grade. When you moved to 5th grade, you moved into the big kids building. And it was 5th through 8th grade in Brescia Hall, which was like the big kids building. So I think from the time I was real little, like 5, there was sort of this goal of when you got big enough, you moved over to that building. And something about that, I think that was a dividing line right there.
you were like, "World, I'm here."
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so.
Okay, and I like what you said about I love what you said about keeping the psyche, because that's why I asked that question about 10-year-olds, because I think everyone stays that person really. And it's how firm do you hold through all of
Yeah.
what life throws at you and tries to, like, because life works really hard, doesn't it, to try to
Yes.
make you not that
Yeah.
person.
And I think you're right. I mean, I think it is definitely a constant in ways throughout, but I guess maybe like 11 is where I became sort of more like the most aware of myself. And then that's kind of progressed from there. Because I know that since I was 12, I've wanted to be an actor. But before that, it was just something I liked to do. And it wasn't really until I was 12 that I was like, oh, this is what I'm going to do. Um, yeah, so those are some formative years in there. And 10 is like just before the cutoff of
Yeah.
when I sort of think back to what it was that little person thinking and feeling. I'm not so sure. It's like right before that.
What was the first experience acting that really, really got your soul and your heart?
Okay, so I love The Wizard of Oz. It's my favorite movie. And I got to play Dorothy when I was in seventh grade. And
Wow.
I specifically remember there was a day that, there weren't that many performances of what we did. We were double cast, so it was only like half the amount of performances. And then I think we actually only did like two performances each for the whole, 8, 11 weeks, however many weeks it was that we lead up to it. But
But
I remember for
still,
one of the, yeah, it
that's
was like the
that's an
hugest deal to me. It
iconic
was the
role.
hugest deal. Yes, it was so great.
Yeah.
And working toward it and singing that song and it was so wonderful. And just a story that I'd loved my whole life and still do. And I remember that I was in the stairwell. They were doing my hair and putting it in the pigtails. And I just remember the lady who was doing my hair, she had been an actor in New York. And she was kind of telling me about how she would get her hair done and be getting ready for a show. And that it really brought back her memories doing my hair for me. And like, it was
Wow.
just such a warm moment. And it just felt, and I was like, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do forever is be an actor. So that was the moment that happened.
Okay, so was it a straight path? Was it Emily
No.
pursuing her dreams?
Is it ever a straight path?
Uh, so that's what I'm interested. Tell us about some of the twists and turns.
Oh gosh. I mean, I guess it was a pretty straight path until college, and then I really didn't have the most wonderful experience in college. I went to NYU, and my undergraduate experience kind of took some of the love of theater out of me. It was a bit of a rough patch, honestly. And I came to find many years later that a lot of people went through the same thing there. And
Why was
that
it
sort
the
of,
tough love approach or
mm,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, you could call it that, I guess, but that would be kind. Um, it wasn't great. And I think that the conversations that some of the alums have had since then have actually opened up for me thinking about it. And I think for the rest of us thinking about it too, like ideas about the pedagogy and the arts and how artists are passing on their craft and emotional health and psychological well-being of artists and a lot of different things that I think there just wasn't really any context or language for at that time. And so a lot of us didn't really understand that the way we were being treated was inappropriate.
Yeah.
And I think that that has been a really big growing process over the last, I'd say like it all sort of came out in 2020. It was like right at the same time that the pandemic happened. And a big group from my undergraduate classes sort of started sharing experiences about different things. And it really snowballed and became a big thing with like over 100 of us sharing stories on Facebook about
Has
stuff.
anyone been held accountable, or was there anything tangible enough to be held accountable
Yeah,
for?
unfortunately, there's not really anything particularly tangible enough. There was an article that one of our classmates wrote that sort of started this whole thing. And then right before everything shut down for the pandemic, I came up to New York for Johnny Heller's workshop. And when that was going on, I sent a message to this group and I was like, anyone that's in New York, do you want to get together for dinner? And maybe we can kind of talk about some of this stuff in person. And there were like 10 of us that ended up getting together, and we thought we were just going to sort of have a nice dinner and then go about our ways. But we ended up staying in this room and talking with each other for like 4 or 5 hours, and it ended up being a really deeply meaningful experience. So I would say there was like a lot of twists and turns from college until, that sort of happened. And I've had a lot more clarity, I think, since then that, yeah, this is still something that I really love. And this is still something that I really know that I want it to be a part of my life forever. And don't have quite the same push and pull that I did for sort of that decade between college and that time. So I don't know if any of that makes sense. I
It
feel like
does.
I'm
So what?
leaving so much out of it.
No, no, no. So now, so let me get a picture of this. So you came out of college, and what did you start doing work-wise, career-wise? What was the first step?
Let's see. When I came out of college, oh, the first thing I did when I came out of college was I left. I left the country. Um, I had really wanted to take a gap year between high school and college, and my mom is a college professor, and she was not a fan of that idea.
Yeah,
And so my parents were, pretty firm that they wanted me to go straight to school. And I also, NYU is my dream school. So I was pretty stoked that I got in and that, I was going to be able to go. So I decided, though, that I wanted to graduate as quickly as possible so that I could sort of take that year afterwards. So I actually
yeah,
ended up getting my undergraduate degree in 2.5 years. And then I took that sort of extra time to go and travel. And I spent several months in Europe. And then my best friend from high school's mom was teaching a class for GE. She worked for GE and they'd sent her around teaching these classes in different countries. And she was teaching one in India and she really didn't like traveling that much. And she really didn't want to travel alone. And she was like, I know you're already going to be globetrotting. Do you want to meet up with me in India? And you can stay at this. I mean, it was literally the name of the hotel was Leela Palace, and it was like living in a palace. It was incredible. We
that's
had
so
a
beautiful.
butler, we had like velvet bags for the toilet paper on the back of the toilet. Like it was crazy. It was like six
Was this
star.
like, is this like a pinnacle moment, like of life? Is it like
Oh God,
it
yes.
feels like it would be like a life-changing experience that like you'd keep comparing things to and going back to in your head.
In some ways. Yeah, yeah, I think so. Cause it was like I always traveled before then and I always really loved traveling. My mom grew up in her dad was in the Navy and so they lived all over the country. She went to a new grade school like every year. And part of her really didn't like that, but then the other part of her was really a big fan of having seen and experienced so many different places
Yeah.
around the country. And so when I was little, she really wanted my brother and me to have that same experience. So our family would go on these big cross country road trips. They were my favorite part of growing up, which maybe it's no surprise that this has become something that I'm fascinated with as an adult too. But I absolutely loved these big road trips that we would take. We would pile in the car and just drive all the way out to California and back. And we did that a few times, like every few summers we would go and do that. And then we would just go on different trips all up and down the East Coast. And my dad took us to Florida every year for spring break. We'd drive down there. So I had already traveled a lot in the US and I had not been to Europe. But even when I went to Europe, it's still the Western world. It's very similar to a lot of the stuff that you're used to, even if the
Yeah.
language is different, culture's a little different. But going to India was just mind blowing. I mean, it was like it was literally a whole new world. It was like I had no idea what it would be like to be put in the middle of that country by myself for 3 months.
Wow.
And it
I'm
was incredible.
envious.
They had this deal going at that time that if you were a foreigner, like a tourist in the country, you could buy a train pass for $300 for 3 months. And that's how long I was going to be there. And so I got this train pass and I basically just like lived on the train in India and I would sleep on the train as, my bed or hotel. And then the next day I would get off and go walk around town and then I'd hop back on the train. Then I was like a hobo, kind of
Did you make
just wandering
friends?
around.
Did you
Uh,
make any
y-
like
I
long-lasting friends?
not long lasting friends, but I tell you what, I'm from the South and I thought we had hospitality down, but man, Indians had me beat. They were so incredibly welcoming. Every place that I went, people tried to help me with things. People would just like buy me things. Like it was like they would see me in line getting dinner, and they would be like two people ahead of me, and they would pay for my dinner and say like, welcome to India. I hope you have a great time. It was
Oh,
incredible. They were so just everywhere. It just felt so generous and so welcoming. And I think I've really tried to like bring that back to my experiences, especially living in New York when I've been up there, and there are so many people visiting from all over the place. And I know that as a New Yorker before, I would get a little frustrated with tourists, and they move slower and they're always kind of, trying to find their way and stuff. But that, man, it just totally turned on its head my idea of what hospitality was. And I've really tried to be generous with my time and care with people that are visiting from another place and aren't at home.
I love that. And do you know what that brought to mind? It made me think of something I hadn't put together, I hadn't given any thought to. Um, I was also like that. We traveled like my whole life, and my husband and I, when we met, we lived in different countries like every 3 months. But whenever we would come over here, I would just meet these people that would just go out of their way to be lovely and wonderful. And then when I moved to London and started working for a corporate company and started experiencing prejudice, like not diversity was not a thing. It was like stupid American kind of stuff a lot. I started hating because I hated the people I worked with. And I lost, I think, that naive joy of being a foreigner. I was so excited when I moved. You know what? And you must have had that when you went to India at first, is you're so excited to be, so you love them. You love
Yeah.
them for who they are. And it's funny because I think once I got in that horrible, awful job and I'd been here a while, I didn't love them so much. I, and I think I was putting it out and they were giving it back. And so I love that you've retained that feeling of love and generosity now, going back to New York to give back to people. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
And I mean, what a good way to try to make a place a little bit better, because in a city
Yeah.
like New York, there's so many people. I don't know, there's just so many people, first of all. And so everyone's bumping up against each other,
Yeah.
not just physically, but like energetically. Everybody's kind of bumping up against each other and stepping on toes and trying to protect themselves. And it's just a function of having so many people in such a small space. So I think that it's a really there's there's someone on Facebook or YouTube or something, I don't know. She's an influencer of some kind, but I don't remember her name. And I've seen a couple of her posts in different places, and I really like what she has to say. But she had one saying that it was like a letter that she wrote about trying to return kindness for um meanness or snark or anything. And she was like, I'm not being stupid. I'm not being naive. I know what you're doing. But her point was, you're never going to get me to be someone I'm not.
Yeah. That's
And
always
I'm
who
not
I
that.
was until
Yeah.
that job, my whole life.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah. And so,
kindness costs nothing.
yeah. And so,
Yeah.
I feel like it's tempting to react to things.
Yeah.
And it's not even necessarily easy to react to things, but it is definitely tempting. And it takes a little more consciousness to not always do that. And it can be difficult to maintain who we want to be. So I really like that saying of, you're not going to get me to be someone I'm not. I think that
I
really
love
helps
that.
me kind
I
of.
love that because even when you do, like I will confess, I did. It was so I hated everything at that job, but it doesn't feel good.
No, that's just it. It doesn't feel good at all. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like, it's who's winning or losing there. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I think holding on to the naivete, and you're right. I mean, sometimes people treat you like you're stupid when if
Yes.
you're
Oh, they
too
absolutely do.
friendly.
Yeah. If you're too
It,
friendly, people act like you don't have a thought in your head, but
yeah, but it's
it's
their
just not
loss.
true. Yeah,
That
it's
kind of
just not
that
true.
kind of like snarky cynicism
I used to teach acting to high school students. And, there's always sort of like a couple kids in each class that it's like, oh, they're going to be so cool and they're going to be so distant from things. And I would just tell my classes right at the start, I was like, don't do that. It's so boring. Like, it's so boring. It's boring for you. It's boring for me. It's boring for all the rest of us. Like, be excited about something, be engaged with something.
Yeah.
That's so much more fun to show up to life that way than to just hang back so that you can be in control of something and be cool.
Yeah. Risk people thinking you're stupid. You
Yeah.
have more fun. So, okay.
Yes. You have way more fun, I promise.
So you get back to America and now it's like, okay, time, I've got to have a grown-up life. What am I going to do?
Yeah, so I lived with my parents for a little while to save up money, and then I moved back to New York. And that is actually right about the time that I got into audiobooks commercially, because I moved back up there to do the whole theater thing, but very quickly I ran out of money again. And I was like, I distinctly remember there was, this day that I had just bought groceries with a credit card because I couldn't afford to buy groceries. And I was like, I had never done that before. And I was just like, I can't do this. This is not gonna work. And so I was just like crying. And I just like, I'm a praying person. And I just prayed. I was like, God, I can't do this. I need a real job. I have to find a real
Did you
job.
have friends at that point? Had you?
Oh yeah, and I had like
Yeah.
roommates and stuff. I mean, like
Yeah.
it wasn't, but none of them could help me with money,
Yeah,
like
because
that
they're
were
all broke
not like that.
too.
Yeah.
It's so
Um,
intense, isn't it? That part of life
yeah.
where you're like, I don't know how I'm going to eat.
Yes. Well, and I have to be straightforward. Like my parents are they do well for themselves and they would have helped me with anything if I really needed it. But I also am someone that doesn't really want to rely on that. So I think that there's an internal struggle there even more than the external one of like I want to know that I can make a way for myself in the world. And I just felt so miserably like I was failing at that. So I had this breakdown moment, I'm crying. I just say, oh God, I have to get a real job. And at that point in time, Craigslist was still a valid option for looking for jobs. And I went on Craigslist and
Before it became the contact someone and they'll
yeah,
chop you
yeah.
up into bits.
And so I went on Craigslist, and the very first thing that I saw was a listing for a boutique voiceover recording studio in Midtown Manhattan was looking for a studio manager. And they listed like the requirements of the job were like, you need to be able to use Excel and QuickBooks, and maybe it might have had something on there about editing. I don't even remember what the different things were, but none of them were anything I'd ever done before. I had never had an office job. I was, not particularly qualified for it, but I also was like, I had been volunteer recording audiobooks since high school. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. I kind of have some experience here, even if it's not what they're looking for. I feel like I can make this work. So I wrote a cover letter that sort of explained, like, I see that you work with celebrity clients. I have worked with toddlers. I'm betting there's crossover in the skill set there. Like kind of things like this. So I sort of took my
Oh,
meager work
genius.
experience and turned it into why it would be an asset in this role. And I got an interview. And when I went to the interview, we just had a great conversation. And I just remember really liking the studio owner and ended up getting like a test day and then got the job. So it just sort of snowballed from that very first moment of being like, I have to do something different. Within the next, 3-4 weeks, I think I had this job at it was CDM Sound Studios in the Film Center building. They're close to John Marshall Media. They're all in that same building there.
I just had a moment, a picture of you, the Mary Tyler Moore moment with the hat. Was that Mary Tyler Moore or that girl?
Yeah. Oh, I think it was Mary Tyler Moore. I'm
Mary
pretty sure it
Tyler
was.
Moore. I
Yeah.
just had a picture of you going to your new job with
Yeah, that's really funny.
So, okay, so next pivotal moment. So you're happily working around there, and then what happened?
Yeah. Next pivotal moment. Gosh.
How long did you kind of like work there before you were like, time
So
for something new?
I worked at CDM. I think I was like in studio for like 2 years as the office manager, studio manager person. It's a very small, it was basically just the boss and myself. Like it was Charles and me, and then there was a staff of engineers that were like freelance engineers. Um, they've grown a lot since then, so I think they might have more full-time people now. But
Just to interject here, we got the answer. Thank you, Karen. Karen Cummins. Always want her on a call.
oh,
Mary Tyler
Karen,
Moore
hi, I
threw
didn't
the
see you
hat
there.
in the hair, and Anne Marie held it on her head as she looked up. So that
Okay,
was
all
quite
right.
kind of pertinent to the.
I'm not as up to date on my classic TV. Yeah. Um,
Okay, so
but yeah,
you're working away, steady
I was in
job,
a,
steady
yeah.
income.
Well, because the reason the reason I'm not so sure like what the next pivotal moment was is because like I don't remember exactly kind of the order that things happened in because I was there in studio for I think about 2 years. But then right after that, my best friend from college got like she took over that position. When I was
Oh,
leaving, Charles was like, if you have anyone that you want to refer for the position, let me know. I'd love to know because it's hard to find people. And so I told him about her and she ended up being great and she stepped in as I left. So I was still there a lot because I was like going to hang out with her and say
yeah.
hi and like I was still living in the city and I was still doing freelance work for the studio. So I would stop by a lot still. So I don't exactly remember how long I was there.
So I have a really important question that's
Yeah.
obviously about your career and everything. So after work, were you like hanging out at like New York hot spots and dressing up in wild and crazy outfits and
Lord,
going to
no.
like weird drag clubs and having like a fabulous time with really
I
cool chic
wish.
friends?
Oh, Daniela,
That's
I
how I
wish.
imagine New York to be.
Well, I think for some people it is. I think for some people it definitely is. And it was not for me.
Okay.
That was not the New York that I lived in. No, I had a very small corner of a very shared apartment, um, and did not have the kind of nightlife that one might aspire to.
The dream lives on. I think when I'm like
But
90.
I did walk past Limelight though.
Did you?
You know that? Yeah, I used to
Yeah.
walk past
Oh
there all
my
the time.
God.
Yeah.
Walking past is closer than I've ever been.
I had
I
friends that were into that kind of thing. I was always just a big homebody.
Yeah, see your taste in clothes makes me think, but now I've
Mm.
got a picture of you dressing up in rainbow faux fur, hanging out at your
Oh my
roommate's
gosh,
house.
Daniela, you've got to see that coat. You have to see it
I
in
really
person.
need to because it's just a
Do
thing
you
of
ever come to the
beauty.
States?
Huh?
Do you ever come over here? Do you ever come
I
visit?
haven't in a while, but I'm kind of not able. I'm running out of room to use COVID as an excuse.
Oh.
So I really want to go to a narrator's retreat soon.
Oh,
I
you should.
really,
I didn't go to the New England retreat this year because it just didn't work out, but I love the crowd at that one and I really want to try and go again next year. If you're there, I would love to see you.
I
There's
really want to go.
also
And the
Jules
cruise.
Cruise. I'm going on the cruise and
Are
I
you
am
going on the cruise?
stoked.
I can't,
Yeah.
it's too soon and I don't think I can do it. But like, are you kidding? I have the perfect outfit for
I
that
bet you have all the
cruise.
perfect
I
outfits.
do. I have
Yeah.
the evening 1970s drunk lush
Yes.
woman's dress. I've got the
I
pool
love seeing
out.
your posts about different dopamine dressing that you're
Oh my
doing.
gosh,
I
there's
love it.
nothing like it.
Oh, and those shoes, those shoes that I sent you that had like the color blocks on them or like
Yes.
they were almost like giraffe print or something, but all different colors. Those keep popping up. And Daniela, I can't buy them. They're like $300, but oh my gosh, I just keep looking at them and they're so pretty. Like,
Yeah.
come
Yeah.
on.
I think those are the people they speak my heart language. People that still want to be able to look at pretty things. I just think
Oh
yes, people can
yeah.
write off shopping and stuff as shallow, but like I think there's something to engaging the senses.
Oh,
And
absolutely. Oh
Rebecca
shoot, I'm not
says I
supposed to
call
be
that
looking at the chat.
uh,
You told me to try to ignore the chat bubbles because as people talk, it would throw me, and it
Yeah.
has. But I also, it threw me more that when they came up, I was like, oh shoot, I didn't think I could see those, and now I don't know how to get
Yeah, I
them.
make people put a sticky note on top of it. It's because the thing is my guests are way too interesting. And literally, I always say this, she probably hates me for saying this, but Andrea was on and we were talking and talking and talking, and she's such a Gemini. Somebody's cat ran across the room and we're like in the middle of like dark nights of the soul and like deep, and Andrea goes,
Kitty.
okay, speaking of dark nights of the soul.
Oh gosh, please. No.
So, two-part question.
Okay.
And however comfortable you feel, it can be life related, it can be career related, it can be first book, but most exciting, ecstatic, wonderful highlight moment, and
Hmm.
then hardest moment, and then what you learned when you came out to the other side from the hardest moment.
Um, Gosh. This is one of those questions that feels so hard to answer because like there's this list of qualifications for hardest moment in my mind, and I'm like, does it check this box? Does it check that box? Is that box too many? Is this, so kind of running through a few different scenarios here. Can you give me any tighter parameters of
Okay, so let's look at working career and money. What
okay.
was the hardest moment work-wise where you thought, oh my God,
Oh,
am I in the right place? Can I even do this? The hardest moment and how you came out to a
okay.
resolution for that.
So I have to say the hardest moment for me work-wise was not related to audiobooks or
Okay.
acting. I for about 2 years before the pandemic, I owned a bar. And
Cool.
yeah, it was
In New
wonderful.
York?
No, Lord, no. That would have been crazy. Um, no, this was in a little town we lived in, Bowling Green, Kentucky. Hardest thing that ever happened was having to close that bar because of the
Was it
pandemic.
just money?
It was the pandemic,
Yeah.
but like also, yes, money because the bars were closed for like 9 months, I think, and we had just paid off. So when we bought the bar, when we bought the bar, there was like a debt on the business. So like we were responsible for paying like cash for the business and then also taking on this debt was part of it. Then we moved locations. So that accrued like another several dozen $1,000s of more. We basically just put that on credit cards because you can't really get a loan for a bar. Over the course of the year that we moved, I paid all that off. And
Wow.
I was so proud of that. I felt really amazing about it. But the reality is, if I had held on to that money and paid it off like over a longer period of time, we might have made different decisions about whether or not to close. Because when the pandemic hit, it was literally right before the biggest day of the year, St. Patrick's Day. And it was, the months early in the year are very lean months. I had made a deal with myself that I wanted to pay off this debt before the start of the new year. So I had put like everything in the business to pay off the debt. We still had, a little bit in the savings account, whatever, but it was like we were waiting until St. Patrick's Day to restock everything, basically. Not actually restock, but like metaphorically restock.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
after St. Patrick's Day, we were going to have the savings account would be full again. And we shut down right before that. So we didn't have a cushion when we shut down. We basically just had a few months operating expenses. And then they said that you were supposed to get the whatever the assistance money was. They said you were
Yeah.
supposed to get it approved automatically. That never happened. We didn't even end up like getting approved for the money until after we'd already sold the business. Um So yeah, we ended up having to make the decision to close. And if we'd still lived, like it was kind of a perfect storm of different things that occurred at that same time. It was the money situation, but it was also that we had just moved out of that town. So like we weren't living there anymore. We were 2 hours away. And our staff, obviously we had to let them go. So there wasn't anyone like in town to even try to start running it again. We would have had to
Yeah.
restaff everything. Because they were young, they were college students for the most part, and they all kind of like left town and moved back in with their parents when the pandemic happened. So like no one that had worked there was even there anymore.
I'm going to interject that Karen's got a good. She says you made the best decisions you
Parents
could at
always
the
got something
time.
good to say.
I know she does, huh? You made the best decisions you could at the time. The past experiences put you on the trajectory to be where you are today. And I
I
think
agree with
that's,
that.
you look back. I mean, but I do have that song, where everybody knows your name.
Yes, and that's the part about the bar that is like my favorite. So I did I very quickly came to peace with the idea that there was like a really specific purpose for me having been a part of this business's story, and for it to have been part of my life when it was. I genuinely was not comfortable around people before I owned the bar. Like I was much, much shyer. Um, really not super comfortable making small talk with folks or
I've got to ask, where did you meet your husband? I can't
oh,
help it. I
we've
want to
known
hear
each other
the,
since high school. We've known each other since high
really?
school.
Were you like
Yeah.
sweethearts in high school or just
No,
good
not at all.
friends? And
We were friends. Yeah.
oh, that's lovely.
Um,
That's
we
nice.
met we didn't start dating until years later. But yeah, we were good friends and we talked all the time on the phone and because he didn't live in the same we met at like a summer residential arts camp that's free in the state of Kentucky. Well, a lot of states have this. It's the Governor's School for the Arts. And so most states, they kind of vary on how the length of time or whatever. Some states have it like your entire senior year of high school, you can go to it. But ours in Kentucky is a 3-week program.
Like summer
And
camp.
yeah, it's basically like a really high quality summer camp for rising juniors and seniors around the state. And it's free, it's completely free. So particularly in a state like Kentucky, that's a very poor place, and a lot of kids don't have access to arts education where they are. It's like a really prized jewel of a program here in this state. And it really just changes the lives of the kids that go through it. It's almost a cult following of alums from GSA. We just are very, very tight knit. And stay in touch for the rest of our lives. And we are not the only couple that has, come out of GSA. There are many people that met their spouse early on through
Oh,
that
that's
program.
why do you think that is? Do you think it's because it's
I think that it's a really immersive experience. It's transformative. You change so much and you grow so much in a very short period of time. And I think that that really bonds people together that go through it together. So I don't know that it's always a romantic bond. I mean, for Chris and me, it wasn't at that time. That developed later, but I do think that you become very close with the people that you go through something like that with, especially in those formative years.
I love that. I think there's something really romantic about falling in love with a dear friend.
Oh, I can't imagine it any other way,
Yeah, I
honestly.
think it's
I
really romantic.
I don't think I've ever I don't think I could ever have feelings for someone that I wasn't friends with first. That just seems backwards.
Yeah,
I know that's
yeah.
the way like most people do that, but I don't think I could do that. That would be too hard.
Well, I wasn't friends with my husband first. It was, you know, s- well, we kind of were, but not really. But now we're like more, I mean, see, it sounds weird to say that, but I think if you ask someone that's been married for a long time, if they're more friends or more romantic, romance becomes more friendship. So it's not like discounting the romance. Romance is still there, but it's not what's most important.
Yeah.
Do you know
I
what I
don't
mean?
know. I just with my personal constitution of my spirit, I just can't imagine developing romantic feelings for someone I wasn't already friendly with. Like,
Oh, I was romantic for anyone. I would collect accents. I was like, you're foreign? Where you're from? Oh my God, I'm madly in love with you.
I don't get crushes on people like that. I just, well, I also though, like I've been married for so long, it's been, I don't really think about this kind of thing that much anymore. So, but
I
yeah,
think we
I'm
should.
thinking like high school and stuff. I never was boy crazy. I never had a celebrity crush of any kind.
But
That just
I
always felt so
challenge you
strange to me.
though. I challenge you, and I challenge all my married friends out there to like pay attention to how actually cool and romantic it is. It's like you get to hang out
Just
with a person you have a crush on every minute.
every day. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember kind of feeling that way about like first moving in together, although we did not end up getting along very well when we first moved in together. It was actually not a very pleasant experience for several months, but uh I'm also not necessarily the easiest person to live. I know this would shock you, Daniela, but
Really?
I'm not necessarily the easiest person to live with.
None of us are.
I need my
None
own
of us
space.
are.
I need my own space. We've always lived in smaller places, and we generally have some place that's like a 2 bedroom, and so we have like our room and then we have my room.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's kind of the way that we have to set things up for me to stay happy.
That's the way we're set up because I'm not allowed to let my 90s bordello style spread around the entire flat.
That's funny.
Now we need to talk about important things.
Okay.
Not that love and romance isn't important, but um, I've got some things I don't want to miss. But I've got one last question. Then I want to talk Nomad. Then I've got another final question for you. But the one last question is highlight, most exciting moment, best book, most giddy moment of, yes, Karen, love and romance is the most important. I totally
Aw,
agree. It is the most important. It's like
I
going to be
like
my
that.
favorite part of this call. but but giddy, exciting, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this moment in your career.
Giddy and exciting. I feel like I'm blessed in that I have had a lot of what I guess would be like really high moments, but I've never been sort of, it's never felt like a roller coaster of like ups and downs. It's always just felt sort of, well, and also my relationship to audiobooks has always been kind of like it's always been sort of the backdrop to everything else I've done with my life. Audiobooks have always been there for me. Audiobooks have always been able to sustain whatever other crazy idea it is that I have. Um, and I've always loved this industry so much for that. It has made so much possible for me. And so I guess I don't usually think of my peaks and valleys as being related to audiobooks. Audiobooks are sort of like my steady bread and butter.
What was the
And
first book you ever did? Do you remember?
the first book I ever did was with Katie Kelgren, Bloody
Wow.
Jack, the Bloody Jack series. I got to QC, or you're talking about narration?
Yeah. Yeah.
Narration. Oh, I don't
So,
remember the first book I ever narrated.
because it was for the, okay, so then here's the other question I think is from Karen. I want to know about Emily's Grammy win.
Oh,
Was it narrating, directing, or producing?
it was
Because
editing.
you're not even bringing, I'm like, giddy high moments. You didn't even mention a Grammy.
Well, here's the thing. Let me tell you about this. And I'm really glad with the way that this worked out because it gives me a totally different perspective on awards. I didn't really do anything. I mean, I was
Rebecca
working
says
at
Grammy. We've all got Grammy. Karen's like, did you
I
get a
was
statue?
there is another editor that I've talked with about this, and she has multiple, she's got like 3 or 4 now at this point. And I was just talking with her about this like a couple weeks ago. And I was like, man, it's just so incredible. Like you're the best in the business at what you do. And she was like, I don't think I'm the best in the business. I just think I'm in the right place at the right time so much of the time. She was like, I don't know. I got roped in on this project and I got roped in on this project. And like, I just happened to be asked to do these things. And like there's truth in that. You if you do the work and it wins the award, then it was worthy of the award because it won. But there's also a lot of truth to, like, I only edited a Grammy award-winning project because I was working at that studio at that time and got asked to work on that book. Like
Did
I
you get a
I wasn't.
statue
No.
or a certificate?
And that's
Did they give?
always been a bit of a sore spot. I really wish I had a statue, but no, I didn't get one.
I would go
They're
make
limited on
myself
the number
one.
of people.
I would
Well,
totally make myself one.
I have since contacted the Grammy, whatever the body is, the recording, the name of the body of people that do the Grammys. And I have sent them a message, and I was like, at the time I was young and it cost like $300 to get one or something. And I was under the impression that you had to be on a short list of stuff. And I was like, I don't know if any of that is accurate. If it's possible for me to get one, I will gladly pay whatever you want me to
Yeah, like
now.
I totally
Yeah.
would. And if
So
not, I'd go to one of those shops that makes like the awards that they
just
give
get
to
a
like high
fake
school
one. Yeah.
baseball teams. I'd say Grammy. So,
but
okay.
I really do feel like it was a blessing to have that happen, because I don't see awards the same way. Like I just don't feel like they don't give me validation, because I know that I didn't do anything in particular that was extra special to get that. And I think that that's just being in the right place at the right time. It has been most of, I think, a lot of people's journey to getting an award. And so I'm glad that I had that experience to feel like that's not something that I'm either A, chasing, or B, judging other people based
Or
on.
being left out of. It's not like
Yeah,
a
or being left
party
out
that
of.
you weren't
Yeah.
invited to. It's
Yeah.
Karen says, I have a Grammy replica that looks fantastic. I got it on eBay as a placeholder for the real one. So if they say no to this, okay, we need to get to, I'm conscious that we're running out of time, and I very much want to hear about the beautiful, gorgeous, and I think we might have had this conversation, but in my befuddled last year, I can't remember what the answer was. So it's not just me that it looks like the Partridge Family
No, it's not
band.
just you. You've
Okay.
mentioned that. There have been a couple of other people that mentioned that. And I specifically, when we were doing the painting of it, I made the top of it to be sort of like an homage to the Partridge Family
Cool.
bus, a little
Cool.
bit more than the designs on the rest of the side. But I don't think
Can
I have
you
any clear pictures of the top on the website.
can you walk us through how you came up with the idea, what it entails? Tell us
I
about.
wish someone would walk me through it, because you want to talk about ups and downs and peaks and valleys and meandering. When I look at it now, and there's so much that's, gotten done, and that it has actually finally today launched, which is just surreal to me. I
And
can't
you
believe
guys are
that it's
here
out
to
there.
see it.
Yeah.
Launch day.
I cannot believe that it's actually out there in the world. And I'm feeling incredibly, I will say this, I'm really proud of it. It is exactly what I wanted the episode to be. I spent, hours painstakingly making it exactly what I hoped it would be. But at the same time, I feel incredibly vulnerable that I've, put my whole heart into this thing, and now it's just out there walking around, and people can listen to it and judge it, and all these things that happen when you make something creative that's a piece of yourself that you put out in the world. So I'm very acutely feeling that today. But I'm also really excited, and there's like a peace that comes with having done the thing, like I mean, it seems like you have some experience with anxiety, and I know that a lot of my own experience with anxiety, it sort of centers around, like, there's like this little chatter in the back of my head of like, you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to be doing this,
Yeah.
you're supposed to be doing this. And there are certain moments where that I can feel that chatter stops.
I'll tell you
And
something that's really exciting, and it's taken me 2, 3 years of doing the Joe calls. I always edited out the parts that I thought I said something inappropriate, or I would be like blasted by the appropriateness people or
mm,
whatever. I edited out some of those parts, but I got behind in the editing, and I just literally couldn't listen to myself. When you're feeling vulnerable, the last thing you would do is listen to yourself the
Listen
way
more to
you were a
yourself.
month
Yeah.
ago. And so I just put them out there, and it was the final piece. So I hope you find this in these podcasts. It was, you know how people have that, the bit that they show the company face and then their private face. They have the part that they show the public, and then they have the bits that they're nervous about being accepted for. I don't have any of those anymore. There's
Daniela, I think that if you want to see a dictionary definition of those two things, look at emilypikestewart.com and then look at the Nomad Narrator. And I
okay.
think it's very clear that I am not quite to the point where you are yet.
But you will
Because
be, but you will be. That's the
I sure
exciting
hope
part.
so. I think
You
that that
will
would be
be.
great because it does feel sometimes like there's a pressure to not integrate the fully creative, wacky, zany part with the supposedly professional part, which
That'll go away
I could go on and
completely.
on about how I think that professionalism is a tool of control that we don't really need that much, and empathy is the real winner of where it's at, and we don't need the rules beyond that so much, but
And
we
there's a
don't have
place, there's
enough
a little
time at the end
place
of this call.
inside you. There's a place inside you that I think you just rest in. That's the only way I can describe it. There's a place
Mm.
inside you. It's made up of all the things you want to do that you know are good, that have been in the back of your mind, ideas and plans and wackiness and faux fur rainbow. There's a faux fur rainbow place inside your heart. And you just get so tired of all the professional appropriate crap that you just rest in that place, in your happy little place, in in your comfortable room in your flat or your house, and your van, your Nomad, you rest there, and it kind of doesn't matter. And you can
I
get
think that
there.
clearly, hands down, the best phrase uttered in this call was there is a faux fur rainbow place inside your heart.
And there is,
Yep.
honestly is. I'm
Oh,
so
I feel it.
excited.
It's right here. Yeah.
It's I look that first that intro to the podcast and your voice and your excitement, and you can tell when somebody has created something from the heart, and it's
Mm.
special just because it is, and it is from your heart, and it's and you've held on to it.
Daniela, you're gonna make me cry. I know this is a thing you do with your guests, but it works.
Not on purpose. But I've seen, because there have been trials and tribulations, and it's hard to like get past that point of having enough faith in yourself when other people are like, wait, what are you doing?
Yes. Well, I have to say the reception of the idea was always a lot more enthusiastic than I anticipated it would be. I thought when I tried to explain it to people that people would be like, why would anyone want to do this? But I actually found that a lot of people were like, wow, that sounds really neat. Tell me more. And I'd be like,
Yeah,
okay, other people think this is a good idea. But that voice of thinking it was not the greatest idea was actually in me.
yeah.
And I really had to confront that and kind of ask myself where that was coming from. And then, there's been a whole other set of circumstances around this project that I've talked with you about, and I've talked with some other closer friends about. And, it's not private, but we don't have time to get into it now. But that there have been a lot of things that have really made me doubt whether this was something that I could continue moving forward with. And man, it feels good to have hit publish today and to have this thing out in the world that I really wasn't sure a lot of times along the way, especially in the last year, whether I was gonna really be able to do this or whether I needed to stop and recalibrate, my energy and my time. And
You backed
it's very
yourself.
fulfilling.
You backed yourself. And I think every time we do that, that it's a giant step for mankind. I do. I think it's the hardest thing. It's the hard, fight your own demons. And I'm here, world. This is what I love right now.
Mm.
And
Oh,
I
and
think
I
it's
like that
amazing.
too. This is what I love right now
So we're going to put a
because,
link to it in the about
yeah,
section.
okay.
So people watching this video, if you want to see what we're talking about, by the time you watch this, I mean, this is going to be out very soon anyway, but if you're watching this 6 weeks from now, a year, go to the site. If you haven't already fallen in love with the Nomad Narrator, you will, seriously. So anything else you want to tell us about it?
I just think that it is a really fun thing to listen to. Honestly, I've heard it 50 million times at this point in the editing process of going through this episode, but I hope that as people listen to it, they will realize what it takes to spend an entire day, because the audio is about, it was like 11 hours of material that I edit down into a story that's like, about an hour. And I hope that when they hear it, they really feel like they were there with us all day, and that they feel like it um, is an opportunity to like see through the window of this person's view on the world and what we experienced and how it impacts creativity and connection. And there are so many words that I can't even come up with. And I hope that the work itself speaks for itself and that people have the experience that I'm intending to create for them with this.
Well, I'm honored that we get to be a part of this on your launch day. And it feels like what PJ told me on a call once. It's that we're creators. And I get that feeling when I interview guests. I'm literally honored to be in the presence of the people that are creating this new world.
Mm,
And that's and this is like, and it's pure magic from
yeah.
stardust, an
Yep.
idea into something so tangible and so amazing. Okay, I'm hitting you with a question.
Okay.
Nobody gets away without. If you would like people to just, if nothing else, if they came away, if they were busy feeding their dogs and cats and watching TV halfway while this call was going on, but you wanted them to come away with one thing, if nothing else, what one piece of advice, words of wisdom, what one thing would you want to leave the guests with?
I want them to believe in themselves. And I don't know if that particularly specifically came out of anything, one moment in this call, but I feel like the whole thing altogether leads toward that. I just want everybody to know that they have inside them the ability to make magic and move mountains and create worlds, and no one can stop them. They just have to let themselves do it.
That's a good one. I like that. Emily, it has been an honor and a delight.
I
It
loved doing this. Thank you,
really
Daniela, for
has. You're a
inviting me.
terrific star quality guest. And Halloween, guys, I hope you all have lots of chocolate and sweets and beverages. And we will see you on the other side. And Lisa says, believe in faux fuzzy fur rainbows.
Rainbows.
And
Yes.
love you all. Thank you so much, Emily. Mwah! Thank you, everyone. See you
Thank you,
later. Video is going
Daniela.
to be up in just a few days for this one in honor of
Great.
Nomad Narrator. Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks. Bye, Karen. Bye.